Welcome.
Who's first on the list?
Oh, is that how it's...
Well, do we want to start with Ruth? We'll go in order here, and in the order I called you.
Great.
How's that?
Pull them up close and
Like that? Hello?
There you go.
Hi. My name is Ruth Hardinger, and I am here on behalf of Damascus Citizens for Sustainability and New York H2O, a group, an environmental group that has been working both in Pennsylvania and in New York to protect the watersheds. I'm going to highlight three very important topics and give you copies of all the supporting materials. So this is hopefully going to be a 5-minute presentation.
Okay, good for you.
Radon. Marcellus gas has very high radon content and will increase lung cancer in residents because radon and its radioactive decay daughters will be released into the air and breathed by domestic and commercial end users. Marcellus gas can have radon levels of 30 to 80 times higher than EPA mitigation levels of 4.4 picocuries per liter or more. From what little wellhead gas stream radon data we have, radon levels of 135 parts per million could emit from a Manhattan stove if Marcellus gas is used. There has been a casual dismissal by FERC, the state, and the New York City governments of this issue with unsupported assertions that processing will remove radon and venting of apartments will eliminate it as a health risk. Industry has no plan to process upstate's dry gas, and venting New York apartments is not available. These are not solutions. Regulatory agencies must oversee and require industry to prove safe levels by measuring and reporting levels of radon at the wellhead, compressor, and metering regulating stations and distribution pipelines continuously, or not use this gas. This is about people's lives. The precautionary principle must be rigorously applied. This issue pertains to any end user within a similar distribution time frame. We're talking, with these numbers, it was talking about like a 15-hour time frame. So if the gas came from 15 hours outside of New York, which would happen in upstate New York, by the time it gets to New York, it's still going to be, it could be very high. And that is one measure that's been taken. Second topic is the New York City watershed. It is impossible to determine a safe buffer zone for New York City's watershed and statewide water sources. Hager-Richter, a technical memo for the New York City, was written for the Hazen and Sawyer report. Quote, Hager-Richter does not recommend a specific revised setback distance herein because there are too many uncertainties about site-specific subsurface geological and geophysical conditions, and the condition of unreinforced concrete-lined water supply tunnels is unknown. What constitutes an acceptable level of risk of damage to critical water supply infrastructure is more a matter of policy, not geophysics. Migration is the problem. Toxic fluids and gases introduced and released by fracking will travel through natural and induced fractures, faults, fissures, until they end up in the wrong place. Only a small amount of these fluids and gases goes up the well bore. The rest, under great pressure, migrates forever. That's what every geologist says, except if they were paid by the industry. During construction of the New York City water tunnels, that was a number of decades ago, a migration of 7 miles through the natural faults was documented. 7 miles. Why a 4,000-foot buffer when migration of 37,000 feet was observed? I'll submit underground migration studies and what to expect in 20 to 30 years when toxic matter rises from the deep uncontrollably to aquifers and surface, plus papers showing real-life damage described in the first paper. A horrific condition caused by Chesapeake started in 2010. The Susquehanna Basin has a 60-mile methane plume running uncontrollably now, and it cannot be fixed. There is no evidence that contamination can be truly avoided by regulation. To permit this known health risk technology is simply insane. That would happen if political power overrides a scientific study saying there is no safe setback distance. And I gave you that much data on that. The third point is about fugitive emissions from pipelines done by a gas safety study in New York City. Damascus citizens engaged Gas Safety, Inc. to study pipeline leaks in Manhattan last month. Using a Picaro testing device, you've got this, and other people may be interested. Little lines are the methane leaking out of leaking out of the gas pipelines in Manhattan. The Picaro testing device collects data points with an accuracy of a few parts per billion, about 4 times per second. I submit a draft report of these findings, which document leaks of methane across about 160 miles of city streets. We know that the baseline methane emissions from pipeline leaks in Manhattan vary from 1.9 to 47.2 parts per million, whereas in the open country outside the city, the baselines are much lower. Natural gas leaks are 90% methane. Methane is 20 to 100 times more potent a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. Gas companies usually report 2% of loss at production, 2% in transport, and 2% in distribution sectors, which equals 6% of gas lost at the atmosphere. Someone earlier mentioned that there's now a study that has at 9% of gas loss. By the way, consumers pay for this gas loss. Leak amounts to the atmosphere during extraction, transport, and delivery are additive, and the total of over 6% contradicts the claim that natural gas has a smaller carbon footprint. Its footprint is more than coal. The DEC regulations do nothing to control this impact. The New York Times yesterday reported 2012 was the hottest year ever. Natural gas methane emissions substantially add to acceleration of global greenhouse gas. This is a climate contribution of urgent concern. Time to go to renewable energy before we contaminate the planet beyond repair. Thank you for holding this hearing.
Thank you. Mr. Huston?
Committee chairman and members, thank you for holding this public hearing and listening to the voice of the people on this very important matter. So I come to you, my name is William Huston. The group that I work with is actually called Shaleshock Media, and we do documentary work around this whole shale gas invasion. That's the word that I'm hearing people use now. I've been doing this for about 2.5 years, and I've been researching and blogging about this. So one thing I want to start out by saying, I am going to speak to the regs. One thing I want to talk about is that there is a concert of concurrence from everyone that we should trust the science. And I just want to point out a couple of gotchas with that. I have a background in science. I have made a career, almost, I hate to admit it, 30 years of working in the sciences, computer science. So there are some limitations with science, and I just want to point them out. So first of all, if some people speak as if there is an absolute authority of science, and I would suggest that this is a form of dogma that actually is against the basic principles of the scientific method, and that is the appeal to reason of the conscious observer. That's why science descended from the theocracy in the Middle Ages as a rebellion to the revealed truths that only the clergy held and could understand. Whereas with science, we can prove it to ourselves. And it's very similar to democracy, where democracy descended from the royal classes because we said we can rule ourselves. We don't need, some royal class. They're not special. But I would suggest that anybody who believes in the infallibility of science, the completeness of science, the certainty of science, well, I would suggest these people are not keeping up with the literature. This is the literature of the 20th century. We're in the 21st. I would point to Werner Heisenberg, Kurt Gödel, Thomas Kuhn, David Hume. There's all kinds of problems and limitations with science. One of my favorite is Karl Popper's criterion that all scientific truths must be falsifiable. I'm not making this up. You can check it out yourself. So we have to be really careful about trusting the science. There's a lot more dimensions to our experience than just the rational. And we need to be, this is such a critical thing. I assure you that when a young mother is trying to decide what food to give her baby, she's not using peer-reviewed white papers. She's using her senses, all of her senses, her body, her sight, sound, smell, her intellect, all of it. And that's what we need to be doing with this issue. Okay, so now then, I have been traveling all over Pennsylvania, and what I will tell you is, despite what you are being told, the cases of water contamination, really extreme health impacts, and abuses to property rights, and abuses to democracy is rampant in Bradford County and Susquehanna County. That's where I've been concentrating because it's nearby. But, I know Clearfield County, Washington County, the places around Pittsburgh, they're pretty bad too. One thing is, this is kind of a fun thing that I've done. I call it the MLS from hell. This is it's abandoned properties that are no longer habitable. In Pennsylvania, very close to here, there's actually 3. This is one on Paradise Road. Isn't that ironic? Paradise Road in Bradford County, PA. And I put Aubrey as the real estate agent from hell, Aubrey here, because he owns this house now. Chesapeake Energy bought this house for below market rates. This is what is coming to New York. So that's just one example. Another example is, there's this document out there called the List of the Harmed. I highly suggest that you check it out. Right now, there's over 750 families that have been impacted by health impacts, primarily, is what's on this list. And 750 names, and it is not complete. And I'll give you an example of one name that isn't on it, and that is Patty Klotz from Warren Center, PA. And I just went and visited her. And the first thing that caught my attention was she posted this picture to Facebook. And what this picture is, it's a picture of some kind of reddish-brown goo that PennDOT is driving around and spraying on her roads. And she doesn't know what it is. It stinks. It's foul. It's not like anything she's ever seen before. And if you look at the Google Maps, fly over some of these fracking areas, you see these big pits with this reddish-brown goo in it. Is it frack waste? I don't know. By the way, in Pennsylvania, they just changed the rules to allow the spreading of this waste on the roads. The rule change was in July. This photograph was taken in August of 2012. So it looks to me like they're doing it. The other thing that's interesting about Warren Center, PA, this is a subbasin. This is actually the Wapassetting Creek subbasin of the Susquehanna River Basin. And this is where Warren Center, PA is. And notice it drains north into New York. So this goo that's being sprayed on the roads in PA is draining north into, actually it's Waverly and Nichols. So that leads into my discussion. What I really wanted to discuss today was about watersheds. And So what a watershed is, and there is documentation in the packet that I gave you. A watershed is a drainage basin. It's not just, we hear a lot of talk about principal aquifers and primary aquifers and such things. The first thing I want to say is that the distinction, one person did say this before, but it bears repeating, is that there is no scientific basis for the distinction between a principal aquifer or a primary aquifer. Or a sole source aquifer. These are all based on what my friend Chip Northrup calls political science, meaning it's an arbitrary threshold that's based on population density only. The people that live in places with higher population density get better protections for their water supplies. And I also want to tell you, I've looked into this filtration avoidance determination. This is the thing that is protecting the Syracuse watersheds and the New York City watersheds. If you really look into it, here's what it's trying to say. Our water supply is especially pure, therefore it deserves special protections. That's the basis for it. It seems to work against something that's in both the New York State Constitution and also the U.S. Constitution, and that is equal protection of the law. What's good enough for the New York City watershed is good enough for ours. Let's see, what number 4. So back to Patty Klotz. In the latest regulations, there is an improvement over the last iteration. The last iteration, the setback from a dwelling was 100 feet. That was like really bad. Now it's 500 feet. So it's a small improvement, but it just so happens that Patty Klotz in Warren Center, PA, she's got a drill rig 500 feet from her living room. And I sat in her living room next to her chair. That's what this is a photo of. So what you can see is these black lines right here, this is her window, and this is a little guard shack that looks right at her when she's sitting in her easy chair. This guard shack, and then here is the drill rig, chopped off. That is a 500-foot setback. That's what a 500-foot set. That's what the new regs permit. And by the way, the 500-foot setback only applies to the well pad itself. It doesn't apply to any other, ancillary equipment they might be dragging onto the site. So there's no setback for anything else. This is a quick map. My friend Rachel might enjoy this because this is I've composited this. This took me days to put this together, but this is basically, somebody told me that New York State should be called the water state because there's actually a confluence of 5 different watersheds here in New York State. The Ohio River, which drains down into the Mississippi, down into the Gulf of Mexico. We've got the Susquehanna that drains down into the Chesapeake Bay. We've got the Delaware watershed, which drains down into the Delaware Bay. And we have the Hudson Mohawk watershed, which drains down into the New York Bay. And lastly, the Finger Lakes are part of the Great Lakes watershed, which drain into the St. Lawrence River and up to, I think it's called the Bay of St. Lawrence. There's quite a few watersheds. Note on this map, and this is in your packet, this is the New York City watershed right here. And the watershed is the entire drainage basin. It's not just the aquifer. It's not just the underground aquifer. It's the whole surface area. Because it's like the boundary of the aquifer is like a ridge. It's like it's a mountain ridge. And any rain that falls within that area will end up in the river. That's the idea of what a watershed is. And I would suggest that a 4,000-foot buffer around an aquifer is the beginning of a good idea. But as my friend here just pointed out, that there's the basis for actually a 7-mile barrier around the New York City watershed. In fact, a year ago, some people sat at this very table and were arguing for a 7-mile barrier around some of the critical infrastructure. I think it was just the aqueducts.
Mr. Huston, I need you to wrap it up, please.
Ooh, wrap it up. Okay, I'm sorry. So this is where I live in the city of Binghamton. I live in actually town of Union, but I'm just downriver from Binghamton. This is something which nobody has talked about. Nobody is talking about. Nobody is talking about it in the press. Nobody's talking about anywhere. But there are, right now, 98 unconventional gas wells, that's like hydrofracked gas wells, within the city of Binghamton watershed and the town of Union watershed. We get our water. Our water is influenced by the river. City of Binghamton takes their water directly from the river. 98 gas. This would, New York City asserts police powers authority over their watershed, rightfully so, because they want to be very careful about what goes on inside their watershed. The new regs do nothing to protect Binghamton from what's going on in a different state. This would produce a police powers response. If there was 98 wells within the New York City watershed, so that's what we're dealing with in Binghamton. I'm going to try to wrap it up. Here is the Susquehanna River, the Susquehanna watershed. This pink area here is parts of Pennsylvania where there's fracking going on that drains north into New York. I'm just bringing this up because the regs don't address it, and I don't even know how to address it because it's not within our state. We need some kind of interstate protection from this, and the SRBC is completely a captured organization. I'm just going to try to, in sum, we have 190,000 New Yorkers right now that are at risk because we are downstream. 190,000 New Yorkers are downstream from fracking operations in Pennsylvania. My last point about the regs, which I haven't said before, and I'm only bringing this up because it's never been said before. I haven't heard anybody say this, but the greatest impacts, I took an airplane ride over Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, I'm trying to rush. And the greatest impacts, some of the greatest impacts come from pipelines and compressor stations. The new regs, and part of pipelines and compressor stations is also refineries. Take a drive around Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, and it is basically becoming a big gas refinery, a distributed gas refinery. They have permits for 27 compressor stations in Susquehanna County right now. And the new regs are silent on compressor stations, pipelines. There's no setbacks. There's no siting requirements. There's no emission requirements. Nothing. Zero. Nada. So, these regs are a joke. These regs are pathetic. They really need to. This should not be being moved forward upon right now. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Snyder.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I represent Sanford-Oquaga area concerned citizens, a group from Broome County in the southern tier. As a demo in my hand is 2 nickels. Each one weighs about 4 or 5 grams. That's 10 grams. 10 grams of iridium salt would be enough to contaminate 1 trillion gallons of water to a level that would exceed the EPA regulatory level for drinking water. That would be about something less than a square mile of water, a cubic mile of water. So, my point 1. Only treatment plants capable of dealing with radium and documenting the radium content can be allowed to treat the wastewater. The state proposes allowing sewage plants to treat drilling waste. Drilling wastewater is clearly known to contain potentially high levels of radium. Currently, wastewater treatment plants in New York State are not required to screen for radium content of water brought for treatment, or the radium content of the drilling cuttings. Two important points here. 1, they are already accepting leachate from the Chemung County dump, which accepts drill cuttings from PA. 2, Elmira, the town where this dump and wastewater treatment plant is located, is already known for its cancer spike of unknown origins. If in the future contamination were originating from the produce water or leachate from the drill cuttings, How will any lawyer win a case without having documentation of the proportion of radium contributed by the dumps, leachate, and wastewater brought by the industry for treatment? I'd urge the DEC to require wastewater not only to be treated in facilities capable of treating radium-laced waste and facilities that are required to screen both inbound liquid water brought for treatment and treated water exiting the facility for radium. Point 2, environmental impact review must be comprehensive and cover impacts of development infrastructure, otherwise environmental justice will not exist. The SGIs cannot be approved until the state has established what single state entity is responsible for the overall comprehensive environmental impact. If no single department is responsible for this, then the public is therefore not protected from unreasonable asset transfer. And please let me explain this. In the town of Sanford, dairy farming has been a dying industry for decades. Currently, the family farm is suffering from stiff competition from CAFO, that is, concentrated animal feed operations. The point is that the land as an asset is no longer valued as for dairy production. When family farms do default, the farmers try to maximize profit by selling their land in 30 to 50 acre lots for vacation homes. This currently, selling the land as vacation homes, is the highest attainable value for the land. If you doubt me, ask any farmer in the southern tier. The vacation home industry only exists for the clean air, clean water, lack of noise, and light pollution. By permitting a well, you therefore must accept, consequently, a pipeline will be approved, and therefore a compressor station. While clean air, water, lack of noise, and light pollution might not sound like real assets, they have an intrinsic value. Any Economics 101 course will teach that the value of an asset is measured by what people are willing to pay for it, which therefore makes these qualities as real, if not more so, than the gas being extracted. Because we know the value of the land for vacation homes. If no state department is responsible for comprehensive environmental impact review, including the infrastructure, then this permitting process may represent the single most massive asset transfer of American citizens in the history of the United States from all vacation home holders in New York State over the Marcellus Shale to stockholders in various companies representing the industry. Most vacation homeowners live elsewhere. They are not even registered to vote in the towns that plan to drill. The analysis of public health impacts must be complete before any permits are issued and must include PA and PA 2010 cancer registry data, which is just coming out now. And for all states engaged in high volume hydraulic fracking. Anything less would be negligent. Currently, we hear there are 4 pipelines scheduled to go through our town, and as for most groups in the southern tier, most people, we have very little funds to deal with trying to or be a party to these cases. Compulsory integration is a concern to us because it represents a way that we have no right to basically resist whether we're going to be drilled or not. The combination of rules for compulsory integration and rules which allow the leaseholding company to create a drilling unit effectively creates a situation where, for instance, a neighbor of mine, the Van Slikes, which have about 400 acres, are divided between most likely 4 drilling units. This means that in spite of the fact that they sign no lease, they will be integrated and the gas will be taken from them. Personally, I do not think this is fair. And if a farm owner with 400 acres cannot stop the process from being developed on their land, then I pose the question to you, who can? The farmers in the southern tier I'll wrap this up very quickly. The farmers of the southern tier are suffering greatly due to economics. The 2008 financial crisis has caused great suffering in that area. A lot of their industry was running off, I believe, housing. In the future, I do also believe that renewable energies are more expensive than natural gas. However, if you look at the future and you say, what is going to be the future of New York State when we are running off renewable energies? I know what kind of farming we'll have. It's going to be the family farm. And I don't think we deserve to risk that. They need help, but this is not the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Malitz?
Thank you. I'll be brief because the hour is late and there are a number of speakers left. I'd like to begin by thanking the New York State Assembly, the Committee on Environmental Conservation, the Committee on Health, ARC, and all of our champions in the Assembly who have fought hard to protect New York State from the devastating impacts of fracking. It truly is an honor to be here. My name is Zack Malitz. I'm a campaign manager for CREDO. CREDO is a progressive advocacy organization with more than 3 million activists nationwide. About 250,000 of them reside here in New York. CREDO's New York activists have written nearly 40,000 public comments opposing Governor Cuomo's and the DEC's plan to lift the fracking ban in New York. More than 300,000 activists in other states have sent the same clear message, that fracking is the wrong way forward. Fracking is too dangerous. The only way to protect our air, our water, our health, and our climate from fracking is to ban it outright. In states like Pennsylvania, Texas, Colorado, and Wyoming, toxic fracking has already left an indelible and alarming mark. From toxic air emissions to massive ponds full of toxic wastewater, to families being exposed to cancer, asthma, and other illnesses, to plummeting property values and, yes, even flammable tap water from leaking methane. Looking at the toxic footprint of fracking across the country, it is astonishing that Governor Cuomo and state regulators are even considering opening up New York to fracking. It's no wonder that New Yorkers vehemently oppose Cuomo's plans for doing so. And of course, methane leaking into wells and into faucets, causing the unbelievable specter of flaming water, is just the beginning. A significant amount of methane is also leaking into our atmosphere. Recent studies, cited by their speakers by researchers at Cornell, NOAA, and UC Boulder, have confirmed that the leakage of methane, a greenhouse gas with at least 25 times the heat-trapping effect of carbon dioxide, is so high that fracked gas is even worse for our climate than coal. But without any methane leakage at all, continuing to burn fracked gas instead of coal is a recipe for disaster, because it doesn't just replace coal. As gas continues to pump carbon dioxide into our already superheated atmosphere, fracked gas also replaces wind, solar, and other clean energy sources that are our biggest hope to avoid an escalating climate chaos that New Yorkers are all too familiar with. As New Yorkers continue reeling from the fossil-fueled superstorm Sandy, it is astonishing that Governor Cuomo would propose expanding fracked gas production that will bring more storms just like Sandy. It's no wonder that the New Yorkers are calling on Governor Cuomo to lead us on a better path. After the storm, Governor Cuomo boldly broke the national silence on climate change by calling for dramatic action to address New York's vulnerability to climate disasters. We applaud Governor Cuomo for his brave words, but they aren't enough. We need leadership. We need Governor Cuomo to take a stand against fracking. Yesterday, at the State of the State, Governor Cuomo laid out ambitious plans for rebuilding after Superstorm Sandy. But those plans are worth little if, while he's helping New Yorkers rebuild with one hand, Governor Cuomo is helping the fossil fuel industry bring us dozens more Sandys by allowing fracking in New York. That's not leadership, it's hypocrisy. But if there is one thing we know about our governor, it's that he does aspire to lead, and he does think about the future. One date in particular, 2016. The 100,000 New Yorkers who will submit public comments tomorrow, along with CREDO's more than 3 million members, are not alone in wanting clean water, clean air, and clean energy. And we want Democratic leaders who are willing to protect their constituents and stand up to the toxic influence of the fossil fuel industry. Governor Cuomo needs to understand that the road to the White House isn't covered in toxic wastewater, it isn't seeped in greenhouse gases, and it isn't lined with drilling rigs. If Governor Cuomo fracks New York, he will be dooming not only all of our futures, but potentially his political future as well. Governor Cuomo should stand up and lead us for a future that is not fracked. The DEC's draft regulations fail to protect New Yorkers from the devastation that we've already seen from fracking and the future devastation that is clearer than ever. If Governor Cuomo's goal is to protect New Yorkers, not to line the pockets of the fracking industry, he will never grant the fracking industry a single permit to drill in New York. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Treichler.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Rachel Treichler. I'm an attorney in Hammondsport, New York, but I'm here today to speak as a citizen of Steuben County, which is one of the 5 counties that have been targeted by Governor Cuomo and the DEC for a rollout of gas drilling. A number of us in the county have been very concerned about the issues of radioactivity in drilling waste. Dr. Carpenter and other speakers before have spoken about the harms to health that are caused by radioactivity and the inadequacies of the regulation. What I would like to talk to you about in my short time is just some of our experiences that we've had in Steuben County dealing with the wastes that are coming into our county now from Pennsylvania. We started to become concerned when we saw proposals that the Steuben County landfill was going to accept Marcellus Shale drilling waste. Also, we knew that the landfills in the 2 counties on either side of us, the Chemung County landfill and the Angelica landfill in Allegheny County, were accepting the drilling waste. And also a private landfill in our county, a construction and demolition landfill, the Hakes landfill, is accepting the drill cuttings. All 3 of these landfills are owned by Casella Waste Industries. And we started to look into it. I think a starting point for our great concern was Appendix 13 of the draft SGEIS, and in the revised SGEIS it is still Appendix 13. I'd like to just draw your attention to this because this shows the gross alpha and gross beta radioactivity levels in produced brine from vertical Marcellus wells drilled in Steuben County and other counties in our area. And the well with the highest levels had 123,000 picocuries per liter. That's more than 8,000 times the EPA permitted levels of gross alpha and gross beta in drinking water supplies. This well in the town of Orange in Schuyler County is 20 miles from my home, so I feel a particular concern that we have right in our area wells that had such extremely high levels of radioactivity in produced brine. One of our concerns was, is there some way that this brine could possibly be getting into our landfill? Because we know that there are the problems with the waste treatment plant taking it. We understand the Bath plant took it for a little bit, and the Ithaca plant did too, I think, but then the wastewater treatment plants were told not to take it. But we heard stories of brine pits in Pennsylvania being mixed with wood chips and trucked to landfills. And I did think it was interesting that one of the one of the landowners, somebody said one of the jobs created was for tree workers in Pennsylvania, and I wondered, well, what are those tree workers doing? Are they wood chipping? Because we have also heard that there is quite a demand for trees in our area to be made into wood chips, so apparently a lot of wood chips are being made. Several years ago, we were given a tour of the northern tier landfill in northern Pennsylvania, which serves 3 counties, and this was a tour that was supposed to reassure us that it would be safe for the Steuben County landfill to take the drill cuttings. Dave Walczak was on that and took some pictures there. But we saw a mountain of drill cuttings, and it was very interesting to see in the drill cuttings that there was a large proportion of wood chips and a lot of white powder, which seems to be hydrated lime. One of the people on the tour took his garden pH meter, and it was off the top. So it seems, it seemed that, and we have seen photographs of, as I said, of wood chips being mixed into brine ponds. So we raised this concern with our county public works department. They said absolutely couldn't happen, that could happen. So we were very interested to see more recently, Catherine Nadeau did a study that was published last May. They foiled the DEC for the where the waste went from, I think, 100 wells in New York. Where did the waste go? And 4 of the producers said, this was their permit applications, and they said on their permit applications where the waste would go. And 4 of them said that the produced brine would go to landfills. And there are a number of other very unsatisfactory answers. I certainly agree with Catherine's statement, which I quoted in the footnote of my comment, that how is it possible that the state's environmental agency accepted these responses as complete? But other confirmation that we've received recently are the Pennsylvania DEP has made public data on where drill cuttings are going and other produced waste from the gas drilling, where that's going. And their records show that a number of wells in Bradford County and Tioga County, Pennsylvania, are sending their waste to the Hakes landfill in Steuben County and the Angelica landfill in Allegheny County. And that, according to their records, this includes not only the drill cuttings, but also produced brine and fracking fluid. Several different types of fluid are also coming to our landfills. We also recently learned that even though because of a lot of citizen concern, the Steuben County landfill has not started to take the drill cuttings, but we've learned that the landfill's pre-treatment plant is taking the leachate from the Angelica landfill and from the Hakes landfill. And so, and there's no testing for the radioactivity here. The leachate from the pre-treatment plant goes to the Village of Bath Municipal Sewage Treatment Plant, which is not equipped to handle radioactive waste. Is then discharged into the Cohocton River, which is a primary aquifer, and the sludge is spread onto Steuben County farmland. We have the largest sludge spreading operation in New York State in Steuben County, Dixon's Environmental Services. They spread the sludge from a number of sewage treatment plants in our area, and also from the landfill pretreatment plant. A number of us attended the hearings that Senator Grisanti held in Canandaigua last December on waste issues, and one of the Pennsylvania DEP officials at that hearing said that 30% of Pennsylvania's drill cuttings are coming to New York. So we already have a large amount of drill cuttings coming here. We think, I hope that you will ban Marcellus shale drilling in New York, but even if it's banned in New York, we still have a waste problem with the wastes coming from Pennsylvania. Also, as Bill said, we have rivers that flow north. In Steuben County, we have the Tioga River, flows north from Tioga County, Pennsylvania, to Steuben County, to Painted Post and Corning, where it joins the Cohocton River to form the Chemung River. And two municipalities in Pennsylvania, Lawrenceville, which is right on the New York border, and Blossburg, which is a little bit south of that, both of them on the Tioga River, are building frac water treatment plants. And we don't think they have the capacity to take the radioactivity out. One of our concerns that we've been learning about is monitoring, because different people have told us, oh, well, we're going to put in these monitoring devices and they will pick it up. Well, as Dr. Carpenter explained, radium, which is, and radon as well, which are the main radioactive contaminants in the flow bag, are alpha and beta emitters. The monitoring devices that they've installed in these different landfills are gamma detectors. They're not detecting alpha and beta. Alpha, and they're placed outside of the truck, heavy metal trucks. Big dump trucks drive through these gamma detectors, but the gamma detectors are not picking up alpha and beta radiation through the heavy metal truck bodies. We consulted a radiochemist at a certified lab, and he said, this is just show for the citizens. These detectors can't possibly pick up alpha and gamma radiation. They're not designed to, and they're not going to. I do think earlier there was some discussion about testing drinking water supplies and the need for more frequent testing. From what I've been learning, it's actually quite difficult, time-consuming, and expensive to test for alpha and beta radiation. So I think that may be one of the reasons why there's less testing for it, because it's not nearly as simple. Testing for gamma is quite simple. It's a Geiger counter, you get some pickup. But to test for radium, they generally test for that, I think, by measuring radon that's emitted and do it over a week or so. It's time-consuming. How are you going to test every load coming into a landfill on a real-time basis? How are you going to test effluent leaving a sewage treatment plant? I think that there are testing issues with the alpha and beta radiation. Maybe there's more learning there that I don't have. So I just wanted to share those concerns with you. A comment that was made in a recent report by the National Council on Radiation Protection talks about the DEC's cavalier attitude toward human exposure to radioactive material. The person who wrote this, Ivan White, said this cavalier attitude pervades the DEC's revised draft supplemental. The document's superficial characterization of radiation risks has prompted warnings from radiation experts, including those at the EPA, whose public comments on the revised draft reflect deep concerns about the DEC's understanding and appreciation of the actual risks posed by radiation. And we've seen an example of that in Steuben County. I've attached to my comments the letter that was written by the Region 8 Regional Materials Management Engineer. He's telling the Steuben County Legislature there's no problem with taking the drill cuttings because they're exempt from the regulations. They're exempt from the solid waste regulations. They're exempt from the radioactive waste regulations because they're naturally occurring radioactive materials, and so there's no reason you shouldn't take them because they're exempt. So he's not addressing the problems, he's just saying, go ahead and do it. So I think that this letter is a good example of the cavalier attitude that the DEC has, and because of that, I think it's essential that the legislature, I know you have waste bills, and I think it's important to, I hope those bills will pass this year and that they, that they address all the aspects of the drill cutting, the flowback, monitoring issues, and those are very important. That's very important legislation, even if, as I said, that you go forward and ban Marcellus drilling in New York.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.